For decades, the pharmaceutical supply chain was a masterclass in cost optimization, but a series of global shocks has fundamentally rewritten that playbook. The key strategic question for leaders today is no longer about incremental efficiency.
That's exactly right. The conversation in the boardroom has shifted from managing a cost center to cultivating a strategic asset. We're moving from a singular focus on cost of goods sold to a more sophisticated calculus of risk-adjusted value and long-term resilience. When you see drug shortages in the US hitting a record high of 323 in 2024, the mandate for change becomes undeniable. This isn't a theoretical exercise, it's a direct response to tangible, high stakes disruptions that impact patient access and shareholder value.
So the why is clear. The challenge is the how. Executives are now tasked with future-proofing these incredibly complex global networks. This involves a multifaceted strategy, leveraging advanced technology like AI and digital twins, rethinking global footprints, and building a new kind of operational resilience. The stakes are nothing less than sustainable value creation for the next decade.
Precisely, and it requires a C-suite led, long term vision. According to McKinsey, manufacturing and supply chain strategies must look beyond short term savings. The new framework evaluates total delivered value, resilience, and sustainability over a 5 to 10-year horizon. This is a fundamental rewiring of how success is measured, moving from pure operational metrics to strategic impact on the enterprise.
Let's expand on that strategic context. These decisions aren't being made in a vacuum. What are the macro-level forces compelling this massive capital reallocation and strategic rethink?
The primary driver is a dramatic shift in the geopolitical landscape. The looming threat of 100% tariffs on imported, branded, and patented drugs under a potential Trump administration has acted as a massive catalyst. We're seeing a strategic pivot toward domestic supply chains that is unprecedented in its scale. It's forcing companies to insulate themselves from political volatility and reshore critical manufacturing capabilities.
And this is manifesting in significant capital commitments. Can you give us a sense of the scale of this onshoring movement?
The scale is historic. Eli Lilly is leading the charge, announcing a staggering $50 billion investment to build 4 new U.S. plants for APIs and sterile injectables. This is arguably the largest manufacturing push by a pharma firm in U.S. history. They've already broken ground on a $5 billion facility in Virginia, and they're not alone. Pfizer, Merck, Roche, Johnson & Johnson, and others are committing tens, and in some cases hundreds of billions of dollars to U.S. manufacturing and R&D. The strategic objective is twofold: secure tariff exemptions and, more importantly, build long-term strategic autonomy and supply chain security.
So this is less of a tactical reaction and more of a fundamental re-architecting of the global pharmaceutical value chain driven by a new understanding of geopolitical risk.
Exactly. It's a defensive move against geopolitical uncertainty that doubles as an offensive move to build a more resilient, responsive, and ultimately more valuable long-term operating model. The pandemic revealed the vulnerabilities of extended, single-source supply chains. Current political dynamics are forcing companies to act on those lessons with conviction and capital.
This brings us to the technological enablers of this new strategy. Terms like AI and digital twins are central to this conversation. Let's think about this through an implementation lens. How are these technologies creating tangible value beyond the buzzwords?
Let's start with digital twins. A digital twin is a dynamic, virtual replica of a physical supply chain. It integrates data from across the network, sourcing, manufacturing, logistics, to create a real-time simulation model. The value proposition is immense. Consulting firms like BCG report that these models can improve forecast accuracy by 20 to 30% and reduce production delays and downtime by 50 to 80%. McKinsey goes further, suggesting digital twins can enable self-healing supply chains.
Can you give us a concrete example of a digital twin in action within the pharma space?
A great example is in clinical trial supply. Pharmac highlighted how digital twins are used to optimize trial protocols and network design before a single patient is enrolled. By simulating the entire supply process, companies can reduce total shipments by 30% and cut packaging waste by 35%. This doesn't just save money, it accelerates the trial's start time, which is a massive value driver in drug development.
And what about AI's role beyond creating these digital replicas? What other applications are gaining traction?
AI is being applied across the value chain. One key area is generative AI for advanced scenario planning. Instead of just running what-if analyses on known risks, it can generate entirely new supply chain designs and simulate a vast array of potential disruptions, creating early warning systems that can reduce disruption impacts by up to 30%. We are also seeing AI-enhanced integrated business planning, or IBP, to improve demand forecasting and production scheduling. Pfizer famously used AI during the pandemic to predict vaccine demand by analyzing vaccination schedules and health policies in real time, a critical factor in their ability to manage global distribution.
This level of investment demands rigorous performance measurement. For the C-suite audience, how do you quantify the return on these digital initiatives? What are the key performance indicators that prove this is creating sustainable value?
The metrics span financial, operational, and strategic categories. Financially, we look at direct ROI. One case study reported a 320% ROI within 12 months, delivering $5 million in annual value from cost savings and inventory optimization. Operationally, we track KPIs like forecast accuracy. One playbook from ALS Industry Insights documented an improvement from 65% to 89%. Another is disruption response time, which they reduced from 5 days to just 8 hours. Strategically, these investments link directly to top-line and bottom-line growth. McKinsey's research found that aggressively digitized pharma supply chains can achieve 3.2% higher annual EBIT growth and a 2.3 percentage point lift in revenue growth. These are the hard numbers that justify the investment.
Let's translate these strategies and metrics into the competitive arena. We've discussed Eli Lilly's massive capital expenditure on domestic manufacturing. How does this move position them, and what can we learn from other industry leaders?
Eli Lilly's $50 billion bet is a classic strategy of vertical integration and onshoring to build a defensible moat. By controlling more of their production, particularly for critical APIs and injectables, they reduce dependency on foreign suppliers and insulate themselves from geopolitical shocks and tariffs. This is an offensive move to secure supply, control quality, and build long-term structural advantages. Similarly, Pfizer's development of an AI-driven integrated supply chain for its COVID vaccine set a new industry benchmark. They didn't just deliver a product, they built a real-time, responsive network that became a competitive weapon.
So one strategic path is this massive, capital-intensive internal build-out. Is there a competing strategic logic at play in the market?
Absolutely. The counter strategy is a more networked, ecosystem-driven approach focused on agility through partnerships. We're seeing a surge in private equity investment into contract manufacturing organizations, or CMOs. Look at Novo Holdings' $16.5 billion acquisition of Catalent or the $10 billion valuation for PCI Pharma Services. This signals a strategic belief that resilience can be bought through agile external capacity rather than built internally. It's a less capital-intensive model that offers flexibility and access to specialized capabilities.
We have two divergent paths here, the fortress model of deep vertical integration versus the agile network model of strategic outsourcing. What are the fundamental trade-offs a C-suite leader needs to weigh between these two approaches?
The trade-offs are significant. The internal fortress approach, like Lilly's, offers maximum control over quality, intellectual property, and supply chain destiny. However, it requires immense capital, carries significant execution risk, and can be less flexible in response to rapid shifts in demand or technology. The networked ecosystem approach offers greater flexibility, faster access to innovation, and lower capital expenditure. The trade off is less direct control, potential IP risks, and a dependency on partners whose strategic priorities may not always align with your own. The right choice depends entirely on a company's specific portfolio, financial position, and long term risk appetite.
The vision for a digitally enabled, resilient supply chain is compelling. However, these transformations are notoriously difficult to execute. Let's look at the other side of the ledger. What do the skeptics argue? Where are the primary points of failure?
The bear case centers on three main hurdles: cost, complexity, and capabilities. First, the implementation costs for digital twins and enterprise wide AI systems are substantial, and the ROI, while high on paper, is not guaranteed. Second is the data problem. These systems are only as good as the data they consume. Many organizations are still dealing with siloed legacy systems and a lack of data interoperability, which is a massive barrier to creating a true end-to-end digital twin.
And the third hurdle, capabilities, goes beyond just the technology itself, correct?
Exactly. It's the human dimension. There's a significant talent gap in data science, AI, and supply chain analytics. Companies need to aggressively upskill their existing workforce and compete for top talent. Furthermore, AI is not a silver bullet. An interesting academic paper involving Bristol Myers Squibb showed that for certain inventory control scenarios, classical policies still performed as robustly as complex deep reinforcement learning algorithms. This highlights that the most advanced technology isn't always the optimal solution. Context is critical. It cautions against a tech for tech's sake mindset.
Beyond implementation challenges, what about the external risks? The more connected and digital these supply chains become, the more vulnerable they are in other ways.
That's a major concern. Increased digitalization expands the attack surface for cyber threats. Protecting sensitive data and ensuring the integrity of the supply chain from counterfeiting or sabotage becomes paramount. This is why concepts like zero trust architecture, which involves continuous verification and least privilege access, are becoming critical components of any digital transformation strategy. The regulatory landscape is also complex and constantly evolving, adding another layer of risk and compliance burden.
So, pulling this all together, we have a clear strategic imperative, powerful new tools, and significant implementation risks. For the executives listening, what is the actionable playbook for navigating this complexity and future-proofing their supply chains for 2025 and beyond?
The key is to adopt a phased, strategic approach rather than a big bang technological overhaul. One framework from ALS Industry Insights outlines a 36-month journey. The first phase is about building the right team and establishing governance. The second phase, spanning months 7 to 18, focuses on deploying predictive analytics, diversifying suppliers, and launching initial digital twin projects. It's about building foundational capabilities.
And the final phase moves from foundational to transformational?
Precisely. The third phase, from months 19 to 36, is about scaling up with AI-driven optimization, full ecosystem integration, and embedding sustainability and ESG monitoring into the core operating model. This disciplined, stage-gated approach ensures alignment and builds momentum. Another key tenet of the playbook is to embrace collaboration. Industry analysis suggests that better collaboration across the value chain could unlock $5 to $10 billion in EBIT gains for the industry. This is about evolving from a linear supply chain to what ISP calls Pharma 4.0 value chain networks, integrated digital ecosystems that link R&D, manufacturing, and distribution.
Ultimately, it sounds like the most critical element is a change in mindset at the leadership level.
That is the core takeaway. The supply chain can no longer be viewed through a narrow operational lens. it must be seen as a central pillar of corporate strategy, inextricably linked to innovation, commercial success, and risk management. This requires sustained C-suite engagement and a dynamic roadmap that balances bold investments in technology and domestic manufacturing with smart partnerships and a relentless focus on creating resilient, sustainable, and long-term value.